And we get it rolling on the Krueg show. Big show Thursday. Vish, though, on vacation. So it's just the duo of myself and the great Jessie Naylor. Hope everybody's having a phenomenal September the 28th as we roll out to you 7:06 on the West Coast, 10:06 on the East Coast. Thursday night football is at the half. We're now in the third quarter. And I made one good decision today, and that was to wager on the Lions. And they are up 27-3, 27 unanswered so far for the Lions. Green Bay kicked an Anders Carlson field goal, and the rest has been all Detroit. So I got one right. How about that? Yeah. Look at that.
I live vicariously through you because I'm not a big bettor. So it's like my emotions go with your emotions on these Thursday night games. And it's a lot of fun, actually. Last week, not a great week for you, or 2 weeks ago. This week, good week. I'm feeling
There you go. There you go. And we got a few topics we're going to hit. I titled the live stream, Should the Niners Get Another Cornerback to Match Up with Miami? And I want to ask that question, but I just came back from Santa Clara. I was at practice today. I went to the whole media breakdown. And why don't we start with something that's a little bit more pressing in Ninerland? The story of the day in Ninerland was that Brandon Ayuk has a shoulder injury and was out of the blue non-contact jersey. So he was out there practicing. And yesterday he was in the blue jersey. Today, no. But Deebo Samuel missed practice yesterday and missed practice today. And Jesse, we all saw him land on the football, and I thought they said, well, he may have had some kind of a rib injury, but I thought he maybe just got winded. Then now we're hearing that he hurt his knee. I asked him in the locker room yesterday, what play did you hurt it on? He said he didn't remember. When I watched the film, I feel like I located it. It was on the very first series, I believe. He had a ball where he was running on the New York Giants sideline, and he hit the ground really hard with his left knee on that tarp that covers up the where the Giants players all stood. And he raised his hand and came off the field. Now, he stayed in the ball game, and of course later scored the big touchdown at the end to put the capper, if you will. But I think that probably he woke up the next morning with probably a pretty good kneecap bone bruise. So he didn't practice yesterday, and he didn't practice today. Juwan Jennings also did not practice. He's got a shin injury. So, Jesse, why don't we start right there? I mean, we're not talking about structural issues. I saw him walk out, I saw Deebo walk towards the shower today, so it's not like he had any kind of a limp, but I'm sure he's got a painful kneecap, and I think Jennings' shin injury is probably also a deep bone bruise, and Ayuk is battling back from a combo chest/shoulder injury. What's your feeling on the starting wide receivers? I mean, this is the one area where I kind of feel like I would just sit them all. I really would. I would sit them all. You got Dallas coming up. You got some tougher games, the Browns, the Eagles looming down the road. And I think you can beat Arizona without Deebo or Ayuk, maybe even without Juwan Jennings. You got Ray, you got Ronnie Bell, you still got Willie Snead. He's practicing really well. You've got Tay Martin, so you've got Isaiah Winstead. You could always flex out Christian McCaffrey and play Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, or Ty Davis Price. I just think that it's not that these guys can't go. If it was the Super Bowl, they'd all go. But it's not the Super Bowl. It's week 4 of a 17-week regular season. You want to be playing into February. I think this is the game where I would sit the starting wide receivers and go with the backups. But the rule of thumb is if you're healthy, you get out there and try to make it happen. What should the Niners do at wide receiver Sunday against the Cardinals?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough that all three are in this situation. And it's also tough because the 49ers wide receivers, we know that when they play real football. They're out there blocking. They're out there hitting. Even if they're not getting the ball, they're still playing a physical brand of football, which makes it really hard. You're not going to put them out there and quote unquote protect them, I guess is what I'm saying. So you really have to figure out, is there a risk of further injuring themselves? There a risk of these things lingering if they don't rest them? Last week, what I said about Brandon Ayuk was, if there's even a 1% chance that anything more can happen with it, you don't play him. And they didn't. I would say the same thing for Debo this week. I think Ayuk will play. I think the extra, I mean, it's been 2 weeks now since he's hurt his shoulder. I think he'll probably be good to go. Now, sitting all three, you got to do what you got to do. If they're truly not healthy, then you sit all three. But I think they can beat Arizona without all three. I wouldn't feel confident that they beat Arizona without all three. Like I said, I think it's possible. I still think they would probably be the slight favorite because there's still so much talent on this team, but I wouldn't feel great about going into that game with all three of them missing. I mean, there's only so much depth. I get that some of those players, Ronnie Bell's a good player, like him a lot. Ray also.
Chris Conley, I forgot to even mention
different.
him.
Yeah, it's very different though when you're like the third or fourth guy versus now you're the guy. That's a whole different ball game. So I wouldn't feel great about all three being out. We'll see what happens. But if there's any risk of further injury, I think you got to sit these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I just, and I know, I mean, there are people in the chat who are saying, let's see here. We got this one. Pobs says, Larry, you are insane. You got to give Arizona a little bit more credit than that. It's not that I think Arizona's garbage or anything. I just think that I mean, Willie Snead is an NFL starting caliber wide receiver who had a really good camp. He's older, and for whatever reason at this juncture, he's on the Niner practice squad, but he could be a starter somewhere else. Now, he's not a star, but he's good, and he practices at a really high speed. I think Ronnie Bell, we saw it in the preseason. He had a 100-yard day in the preseason. Conley for a game. Ray, McCaffrey's flexed out. I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. You try to get through 17 games in 18 weeks, and you're trying to spread the physical abuse around. Football is a violent game with tons of physical abuse. You don't want one guy to shoulder that whole thing. You want, multiple guys to. And that's kind of the reason I've been saying Kyle ought to, balance out McCaffrey's carries with Mitchell, Mason, any other running back you want to use, maybe Ray, maybe Debo. Just because you got to get all the way through the season with your guys. I know the Debo thing's probably just a bruise. The Jennings thing's probably just a bruise. Ayuk's deal might be a little bit more of a shoulder sprain of some kind. To me, it's not about any disrespect to the Cardinals. It's the fact that not every spot on your team do you have backups who can step in and you can still win games. And in wide receiver, I kind of think is the one spot where, Chris Conley's an NFL wide receiver. He's played a lot, and Snead has as well, and Bell looks really good. And I think Tay Martin's got great ball skills. I'm kind of eager to see what these guys look like, to be honest. And I'd rather baby Ayuk and Debo and Jennings, and lose to the Cardinals. And I don't want to lose to the Cardinals, but I'd rather baby those guys, take a look at the other receivers. If it had been past years where they haven't had a real representative backup group of receivers, then maybe I'd say, guys, tape it up, take an aspirin, get out there, figure it out. But since they have guys who can play, let's do it. Let's put them out there and roll the dice. And then maybe just have a heavy run game. Heavy run game plan. I mean, that's my thought on it.
I mean, realistically, if that's what they do, let's say they take that approach this week. I mean, is your wide receiver, is your weaponry around Brock Purdy any worse than what the Chiefs are rolling out there week in and week out? I mean, really, with CMC and Kittle, like it's still probably on par with what the Chiefs are doing with Kelsey, Pacheco, and
Sky Moore.
Who the hell else?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like you could probably get it done. And to your point, I would rather err on the side of health and caution, lose to Arizona if that's what it comes down to, versus not have these guys long term as they make a push. I mean, if they win a Super Bowl, are we going to remember the week 4 loss to Arizona? Hell no. But if they beat Arizona in week 4 and they lose Ayuk for a season, you're going to remember that one, right? So
right.
I agree with what you're saying. I don't know that any of them are in that dire of a situation. If they are, like I said, if there's even a 1% chance, you do have to sit them. I'm in agreement with that. I highly doubt that all three are in that scenario. So maybe one, maybe two. I, I would be shocked if all three sat out. But if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's also about pain threshold. It's like what kind of pain threshold. But here's the bottom line: it's all about winning all the games. So it's like roll out what you need to do to win.
Yeah.
And if you and like because if you played Ayuk, let's just say Ayuk's getting the most seriously hurt, and he couldn't go next week against Dallas, you might not be able to beat Dallas without Ayuk, to be honest. So I don't know. It's a tough call. It's a judgment call. I'm sure Kyle will leave it up to the receivers to some degree. How much pain can you play with? We're just talking about bruises, but at the same time, every game that you play, you're gonna have some injuries, and they have backup receivers that can play. So, Stewart says, remember, Larry, we're trying to get that number 1 seed. No, I get it. Believe me. I get it. David Muschek says, yes, sit Debo, sit AB. Who's AB?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he meant BA. He probably
BA,
meant BA. He was
BA. It was dyslexic. BA, AB. CMC, Ronnie Bell, Kittle with subbing Mitchell, Mason should work. Even CMC flexed out or in the slot works as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we got this one who says Ronnie Bell shines as the number 3, as the number 1. We'll see. Brother Bob with the super says nails. Kevin's dad. Purdy's pimp. You're saying Brock Purdy 45 points? I don't know what kind of point total Brock's going to have this week.
I actually have a question about the 49ers offense for you as we get into the show a little bit.
But. Okay. We got this one too. I read this one before. He said, Pab 79, you mentioned my comment. Made my evening. Love the show. Thanks for the Niner coverage. We don't just always go supers. We go supers most of the time, but you know what? Sometimes there's some really good comments in there and I want to mix them in. All right.
For sure.
Here's another one on the game that I want to get your thoughts on. And I asked Steve Wilkes this question today, so I'll throw it to you, Jesse. If you watch the second half of Week 2 Giants Cardinals, you saw that the Cardinals kicked butt in the first half, and the Giants owned the second half. And they owned the second half by blitzing the crap out of Joshua Dobbs. And Wink Martindale brought the house. And then when he did, it was like, ding, ding, ding. He's going to do that next week against the Niners, and did. And he brought a lot of exotic pressures. So now when I asked Steve, I said, well, Steve, how do you balance this? Because on one hand, you saw Dobbs bothered by all that pressure. On the other hand, Arizona doesn't have a very precise type offense. They exist because of explosives from Rondale Moore, from the quarterback, from Michael Wilson, from Hollywood Brown. They get explosive plays. That's how they typically move the football. That's how they beat Dallas. They ran the ball, and then they got some explosives. Do you play conservatively against their explosives, knowing and kind of force them to not make mistakes and drive the ball the length of the field? Or do you dial up the pressure that works so well for the Giants in Week 2 and bring the house? And when I asked Steve, he's like, well, I think we want to get it done with our front 4. Of course, that's always preferable, but how do you mix it in? And I guess he gave me the answer of, we're gonna rush 4 most of the day, and then he didn't say it, but he made it seem kind of like we'll play conservatively and smartly on the back end and not give them angles. What do you think, Jesse? Though, I mean, it's like if you can't get, the Giants got pressure with Dobbs with their front 4 a little bit, but they really confused him with all the exotics, and he's not played a lot of football. And it's like, I realize you want to get it done with your front 4, but he was so baffled and made so many bad decisions against exotic blitzes. I don't know. I may want to mix in some exotic blitzes. How do you see the Niner defensive plan this week against the Cards?
I think their plan's the same every week. It's, hey, we're going to give it a half, unless they just start getting torched and they got to change things up immediately. But they're going to give it a half, And if they can't get home with 4, they're going to start mixing in blitzes. And it seems like this is kind of what they've been for a while now. They're going to rely on the front 4, expect to get home. Some games that's going to work, some games that it's not. You talk about week 2, Giants Cardinals. Well, week 2, 49ers Rams was very similar. Rams were moving the ball very efficiently in the first half, keeping up with the 49ers. Then all of a sudden they're like, all right, we're not getting home enough. We're sending the house. We're sending exotic blitzes. We're going to make it rough on Stafford and company. And it worked. So you could see maybe that mirror image of week 2 with the Giants and the Cardinals and now the 49ers and Rams possibly playing out in this game too, where it's like, okay, Arizona stuck with us in the first half. We don't like that. We're not getting home. Time to start getting exotic with the blitzes. And I just feel like they have so much confidence in the front 4, which I understand, that you got to see if they can get home. Maybe they're feeling it that day and they can get home. And if they're not, then you start to mix in the blitzes.
All right, you wanted to throw a question in before we get any further down the road and get into the kind of like the headline of the live stream that I put up there at the top. Go ahead, fire away. What question do you want to get into?
Yeah, so everybody's enamored with what Miami did this last week. They're 70 points and they've got so much team speed, and they do. The 49ers aren't going to put up 70. Like, that's so rare to do for anybody. But the 49ers, I think, have not hit their stride in offense. The way that I see it is they're ranked 20th in red zone touchdown percentage. Somehow they're still scoring 30 a game. They're ranked 11th in third down percentage, still scoring 30 a game. They miss Ayuk for a week. They still score 30. Purdy doesn't play great necessarily for a week. They still score 30. So I guess my question to you is, I'm not saying the same way that the Dolphins do it because the 49ers don't have the same team speed. But do you think that the 49ers, if they're hitting their stride in offense, first of all, do you agree they're not hitting their stride and they could be putting up more points, as crazy as that sounds? And second of all, do you think that they can be almost as explosive as Miami offensively if they put everything together a little bit differently, but they could be hey, we could put up 40 every week as well? Do you think they could be that type of offense? Because I do.
You know, I mean, Miami's so interesting because, I mean, you look at that game against Denver and you think, well, they probably just aired it out. And it was 28 passes. And by the way, they were Tua and Mike White were 25 of 28. And they just did whatever they wanted. But they also ran 43 times for 8.1 a carry, 350 yards. Akane, had 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mostert had 3 touchdowns. I think the Dolphins score faster, where the Niners are, a little bit, I think, more unstoppable, but at the same time, they don't play as fast. They don't have as much speed. They have longer drives. It's hard to say, like, what is the top end for the 49ers offensively, because I feel like we haven't seen Purdy's best game. I'm not sure that we've seen a game yet where Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and Debo are all fully healthy, but there's no guarantee you're going to see that either. It's I don't know. I'm not sure what to make, how to compare Miami and the 49ers as far as Miami's got great, all their weapons are incredibly fast. I mean, you can see they're prioritizing speed, and they had a ton of speed they've got a ton of speed in the backfield with Akane and Mostert, so they can run to the edges at will. They can throw it to those guys out of the backfield, and they're really dangerous. It's really more of a conversation about the 49ers. I'm not sure what to say about the 49ers offense, to be honest, Jesse, because, I mean, it's like the 49ers offense has got a lot of weapons, but, they've got some questions on their offensive line. The right side of the line has not gotten off to a great start. I don't think Purdy's played anything close to his best game. So I definitely think what is impressive about the 49ers is that you look up at the end of the game and they have 30. And I don't know how exactly they're getting there, because it's not like they're getting a bevy of turnovers either in short fields. It's not like, well, it's all their defense. No,
Yeah.
it's not all their defense. It just seems like what they don't
Well, like
have
I said, I mean, they had a game. Well, I think it was against the Rams. I could be wrong. I think they went like 2 for 9 on third down in that game. It's like, how the hell did you score 30? Like, how's that? You know what I mean? And like I said, once they're in the red zone, it's not like they're just putting the ball in the end zone every time they reach the red zone. They're ranked 20th in the NFL in touchdown percentage in the red zone. So it's like, man, these guys are kind of, to me, it seems like playing maybe mediocre to what they could be. And that should be a scary thing for the rest of the league, because they still put up 30. Like that's the floor. The floor might be 30. It's crazy to think about it.
They didn't run it all that efficiently against the Giants. They had 3.6 yards per carry. It's bizarre. I mean, I'm not sure what to say about it. I mean, they get them. One thing that it seems like is happening, and I don't have the stats to back it up, but it seems like their field position is better than their opponent. Like they don't go 3 and out that often. They typically drive the football a little bit, and then if they punt, they're burying the other team deep in their own territory. So,
I don't know what the stat is this year, Larry. I do know last year the 49ers led the league both offensively and defensively in the best starting field position in the NFL, meaning their defense started with the opposing offense with their back closest to the end zone out of anybody in the league, and then their offense started with the best field position in the whole NFL, which I thought that was kind of a crazy stat, that on both sides they led the NFL. It does almost feel like maybe even this year that could be similar as well. Yeah.
It's funny. Brother Bob says Purdy's pimp keeps it 100. Brock has looked mid, yet we still love him. What's the last emoji?
He's hiding his eyes like he's waiting for your response.
Well, I mean, Brock is trustworthy and smart.
Yeah.
So that's why you like him, because even in a game last week where there's all kinds of exotics, I was watching that from the upper deck, or it feels like the upper deck. It's the 8th level of the Sky Tower in the press box. And I had it on the binoculars. And when there were free runners at the quarterback, he threw it away. And so one thing that stands out to me is that Purdy will complete almost every game roughly the exact same percentage, 67 to 68%. But of that 68%, it really doesn't tell the story. He's really more like a 75% completion percentage guy, because when there are negative plays and free runners at him, he'll throw it away. He's not missing, 33% of his passes. He's missing 25% of his passes and throwing the others away. So it's very frustrating for the defense that you don't get the big negative play with Brock Purdy at quarterback, because he doesn't give it to you. If you get a free runner at him, he throws it away. So I saw him, he probably threw away 4 or 5 balls in that Giant game, and I feel like almost every game I've watched this year, he's thrown a few away. Like he doesn't, where Jimmy might try to hold on to that or take the sack or make something happen, Brock throws it away. He gets out of the pocket, throws it away. So it's weird. He's more accurate than 67%. And I would say more than anything, if you said, what's the genius, if there is any, with Brock Purdy so far? It's not making plays. It's the avoidance of negative plays. He doesn't have huge negative plays. He doesn't turn it over. He was asked today about interceptions, and that, I think Eric Branch said, hey, it's been X number of passes since the last time you threw a pick. And he's totally cognizant of the fact that, hey,
so hold on. So what you're saying is Eric Branch jinxed him. Thanks, Eric. Way to go, man. Way to freaking go, bud.
With his softball question. You haven't thrown an interception and I'm like sitting there going, well, the other day, Eric Branch asked Kyle Shanahan, if you don't get fired, you'll be here longer than Bill Walsh. And it's like, everybody looked at Branch like, Really? You're going to ask a question about him eclipsing Bill Walsh and then throw a caveat if you don't get fired? I mean,
He's saying if he lives out the rest of this contract. I got you.
yeah,
Okay.
he'll have
I
longer
got you.
duration than Walsh. But you know the one thing, if you say Brock Purdy's greatest traits, his greatest traits are his competitiveness and his escapability. So he can escape, rush, and then he's very, very competitive. And like even today, I was joking with him, sort of. I did an interview today with Brandon Allen, and I said, Brandon, what do you do when you're not playing football? Just like kind of a throwaway question in the locker room. I go, what's your thing? Some guys like going to movies, some guys like to cook, some guys, whatever. He goes, it's golf. He goes, I love to play golf. And he goes, me and Sam play. I go, do you ever drag Brock out there? And he's like, no, he doesn't really play. He doesn't really play. So then we had a chance to talk to Brock, and I'm like, hey, Brandon Allen claims he's the best golfer on the team, and that he would take your money if he ever got you out there on the course, but that you don't really play. And Brock's like, yeah, well, I go, you're from Arizona. How could you not play golf? And anytime I even go to Arizona, that's all I do is play golf. And he started laughing. He's like, well, my dad would play when I was a kid, and I'd go fishing in the little ponds there on the golf course instead of playing. But then he goes, but I'll be working on my game, and I'm pretty sure I'll be able to beat him. It's like, so Brock's got this, he's got a very, very competitive streak in him. So to me, those are the traits. It's the competitive streak, which helps him elevate from time to time, and the escapability. Everything else is kind of, there's more accurate, there's bigger arm guys, there's faster guys, but as far as competitive and escapability, I think he's top level. And maybe that's what kind of compensates for some of his weaknesses, is that he's really, really competitive.
About the way that we both kind of view Brock early this season is, it wasn't my post game because I was at the Pittsburgh Steelers game. I think I threw out a tweet like first thing Monday morning after the game, and then I was watching you later in the week, and you said something very, very similar, where it's like we spent so much time this offseason talking about upside that we forgot, and it was mostly all of us forgot to say, okay, that's true. Yes, there are guys with more upside. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But their quarterback play in the NFL is not the best. There's a lot of guys with a much lower floor as well. And the one thing that we can say about Brock, if anything, is he's about as consistent as you can be. To your point, you pretty much know, barring a one game one way or the other. Like last week, it was 300 something yards. The week before, it was 0 touchdowns, where it's like, okay, the low is 0 touchdowns and 220 yards. The high is 310 yards and 2 touchdowns. But most weeks, you can almost say, all right, I know that I'm going to get out of Brock Purdy 67% completion. I'm probably not going to have any turnovers. Probably going to have 2 touchdowns and 210 yards passing. And if nothing else, that is enough, because what they didn't get from Jimmy Garoppolo ever was the consistency. You never knew who was going to show up to those games. Is he going to throw it to the other team 4 times this week? Is he going to throw for 350 and 3 touchdowns and look immaculate? Like, there was no consistency with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think for Kyle, that's all he's ever wanted. Like, just give me somebody that I know what they're bringing to the table week in and week out. And sure, maybe 2 weeks out of the year, it's 210 yards, no turnovers, and no touchdowns. Maybe 2 weeks out of the year, it's 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. But for the most part, like, this is what I'm going to get. And as long as I know that and I can just pencil that in, I can work around that every single week. And that's what Brock Purdy brings. So, yes, there are guys that are better than Brock, but there are also a lot worse than Brock. And that's kind of what we're starting to see at this stage in his career, where he's at. And I think that floor conversation didn't happen enough this offseason.
Well, hey, it's funny. We talk about Jimmy, like, what's Jimmy's greatest thing? He was his resiliency, but he would create the adversity.
Right. Exactly.
He was resilient. He bounced back, from adversity that he created.
Right.
And then also, let's be honest. I mean, we're all this is kind of not just a Niner fan thing or a football thing. It's like sports fans. It's like we're all kind of get ourselves caught on dreaming on the upside, and we don't really talk about the floor, and my kid was asking me last Friday, Jesse. I took my kid to lunch, and he's like, "Dad, it was a great game last night." And we were talking about the game because I was at the game, so I like to watch it with my 14-year-old, and he had to watch it by himself. So now on Friday, I'm getting a chance to talk to him about it for the first time, and I'm like, "What'd you think of the game?" He's like, "Well, Brock looked really good, and the offense looked good, and they blitzed him a ton, but he handled it." So he's giving me his analysis. And then he said, "Dad, where do you actually think where would you actually rank Brock?" And then I started thinking, well, how would I, what rankings? I mean, rankings, how are we going to do it? So I started thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, this is the only way I can, and then I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, how many quarterbacks in the league do you think Brock's better than? And I'm like, well, man, then we have to define better than.
Yeah, what's better? Yeah.
And so so we were driving around. We went to Subway, had a sandwich, and I said, okay, this is how I'll define better. Is if they announced that Brock was being traded for Patrick Mahomes. If Patrick Mahomes is better, then I'm going to be like, yes. If Patrick Mahomes is worse or not as good, then I'm going to be like, really?
Yeah.
So that's how I define better. Like quarterbacks that I would be excited about if they traded Brock straight up for, then those guys are better. Quarterbacks that I would be disappointed that they traded Brock for that quarterback, then those guys are worse. So this is what I came up with, the list.
And then there's going to be some, though, that are going to be like why? Well, because it's basically the same.
Yeah, I mean, okay, and then I said, well, you got to factor in age. Like, Aaron Rodgers is better. I'm not an idiot. Is Aaron Rodgers better than Brock Purdy? Yeah. Aaron Rodgers is better than Brock
Purdy. He's
Purdy.
Coming off a major injury. He's expensive and he's old.
Right. He's 39. He makes 40-something million or whatever he makes, and he's got an Achilles tear. So if they traded tomorrow Brock Purdy for Aaron Rodgers, would Niner fans be rejoicing? No, they'd be like pissed.
Be happy, no.
They'd be pissed. So this is the list I came up with of guys that are better. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, man, I mean, some of those guys, I still think Brock, I still wouldn't be thrilled if they traded Brock for. Like, Lamar hasn't had a very good couple of years, but he did win the MVP, and he's so damn courageous and athletic and smart and everything. And then, like, Trevor Lawrence is still a little bit of a projection. And then, of course, I bet the Jags on Sunday, and Trevor Lawrence looked like S against the Texans. And then I'm like, well, do I really want to put Trevor Lawrence over him? So then a buddy of mine did the
Trevor
same.
Lawrence thing's interesting because a lot of people are dropping. Yeah, but a lot of people are just dropping passes or can't keep their freaking feet in bounds. Like, it's incredible. You go watch that game. Those receivers have no awareness. He's dropping dimes, and these guys are like, "Oh, can't keep my feet in. Oh, I'm dropping passes." It's weird. It's a lot. But anyways, go ahead.
The other one's Herbert, which is like Herbert. Just his team doesn't win, but he is kind of like the prototype. And I really, and I would be excited if they got Herbert, because Herbert with these weapons and Kyle's offense with this defense. I mean, so the guys who I had on the list that I think, what about Stafford? But then Stafford makes $40 million and he's 35 years old. So no. What about Russell? He's a Hall of Famer. Yeah, but he makes a ton of money. He's not playing all that great, and he's kind of old. What about Kirk Cousins? He's probably had a better career to date, but he makes a ton of money, and he's 35. What about Rodgers? We already discussed that one. What about Jared Goff? And I just like Purdy more than Goff, even though Goff's 28. He makes money, but he doesn't make obscene money. He makes 33. What about Dak? I'd rather have Purdy. What about the one that my kid came up with? What about Tua? And I'm like, well, Tua's driving a sports car, and he looks awesome, but he's had hip problems. He's not old, and he doesn't make a lot of money, but I just would rather have Purdy than Tua. And And then the one that's also very difficult is Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson makes a lot of money. He's not old,
I
but he
don't know what the
completes
hell
like
he is anymore. I don't
yeah,
know what
I
he is
don't.
anymore. He's not the same. He's
He's not the
clearly,
same
at
guy.
least not now, the same guy. It's like, yeah, we know he was a top 5 quarterback, but I mean, the league humbles you very quickly. You can't just sit out multiple years, switch teams, and expect to be every bit as good. And we're seeing that right now with him. So
And
I don't
his
know what he
decision
is.
making has been very iffy. He's
It's
completing
not good right now.
55% of his passes. He
Yep.
just and he's not old, but he does make whatever $46 million a year.
Mhm.
So that's the list. So I go, I guess, kid, I would have Purdy as the 8th best quarterback in football right now. Another buddy of mine said, I like your list. I'd take off Lawrence and I would add Tua. I'm like, all right, whatever. So we both had him around 8. 8 is a sure lot higher than what any of us were saying at the beginning of the year. So I don't know. I'm not sure, but that's how I feel in the moment. And it's all subject to, we'll see. We'll see. But
it's interesting. The way that you're doing it, I don't have a lot of pushback against. I don't know if that's how I would define who's better. Like,
right.
if it's like, hey, I got to go win a Super Bowl this year with the 49ers, money aside, who am I just taking in a vacuum? What players am I taking? I'm probably not going to have Purdy. And I know for a fact I'm not going to have Purdy at 8. But if it's like, okay, now I'm factoring money, now I'm factoring age, now of course I'm getting, like Purdy over a lot of those guys. Yes, that makes total sense. I mean, Purdy at 900K. I mean, Purdy at 900K, that's a whole different ball game because that is a big difference maker. You know what I mean? So that's it. Like I said, I don't have an argument necessarily to say if that's how we're judging it, 8. I can see that, but just in a vacuum, I can take this player or this player and put them on the 49ers money aside. I wouldn't have Purdy in the top 8.
All right, we are 37 minutes into our stream. Let me just throw out our sponsors here. We have our MarinAutoglass.com, bottom of the scroll there. MarinAutoglass.com is fantastic. 415-883-3030 for all your windshield needs. New York style Italian sausage has been with me since the start. The only kind of sausage I eat is New York style Italian sausage. Of course, the title sponsor of the Krueg Show is Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville, Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. or until they run out. Get the brisket chili. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Tell them that I sent you. And also, the Krueg Show is partnered with Underdog Fantasy. You see them up here in the top corner this football season. Underdog Fantasy gives fans a way to play alongside your favorite football team all season long. Check out their weekly pick'em players, where you pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower with their game stats. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, but you can win real money. And you can enter the same as me, or you can make your own picks. Sign up using the link that's in the description and the promo code Krueg, Krueg, and they will match you up to $100.
Do you throw your weekly picks out there?
Sometimes, yeah. Usually one stream a week, I'll throw them out there. And it's fun. And I'm a big fan of Underdog Fantasy, and it's a really reputable.
A lot of pressure, though, because it's like if people are going to tail you, it's like, oh, God, I don't want to be the reason you don't win money. I feel bad.
I always say, beware. Buyer beware.
Yeah.
A couple other supers here. Strawberry React says maybe they are starting off slow. And this is what starting slow looks like with Brock Purdy and CMC. Very messy, penalties, miscommunication, bad snaps, etc. Yeah, that's possible. We haven't really thought about that. What I'm saying
is like that is a big possibility that this is the new slow. This is that if CMC wasn't on this team and Jimmy G was the quarterback and no CMC, that this team easily could start 3-5. But because Purdy is on this team and because CMC is on this team, that this is the new slow.
Well, and to me, I always like to compare things with a constant backdrop. Look at the way Brock played on the road against that Steeler defense. Look at the way that Jimmy played a couple weeks later at home against the same defense. I thought Brock played a much better game than Garoppolo played against the Steelers.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean,
Yes, no doubt about that.
Jimmy really looked like almost like a rookie in that game. Dazzo0187 says Brock is good and consistent, but can he put the team on his back and win a game? And don't you need that ability for a quarterback to be a franchise quarterback? That's a good question. I mean, I can't say that. I can't sit here and say, yeah. Like, give you an example. This weekend, if the Niners decide to, as Jesse and I already discussed, sit Debo and Ayuk, well, there's going to be a lot more pressure on Brock Purdy. But can he, to me, that would be like, what if Brock Purdy doesn't have Debo or Ayuk, maybe even no Jawan Jennings, and throws for 300 yards with Ronnie Bell, Tay Martin, Willie Snead, George Kittle, and CMC? Would that make you feel like he put the team on his back? I mean, possibly. He is surrounded by a lot of talent because he's on a team that has a lot of talent. So that's something to consider. Brother Bob,
well,
go ahead, Jesse.
I want to answer the question too.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we're going to find that out anytime soon. And I'm fine not finding that out. Like, this team's so good that they may not be in that situation. I do agree. Yes, that's what it takes to be a pure franchise quarterback. If I'm paying a quarterback big money, I need to know the answer to that question. However, the 49ers aren't in a situation where they do have to pay Brock big money at the end of this year. In fact, they have till the end of next year before they can decide on that.
Right.
And the talent right now is very, very good around Brock, but Brock has been very consistent. And so the question is we don't know if Brock can be a franchise quarterback, but can he be enough right now? And I think slowly, I mean, we're kind of figuring out that the answer is probably yes, right? Like, I don't know that it nets in a Super Bowl. I wish I had the answer and I could say, yeah, they're going to win a Super Bowl with them. But I would be shocked if they lost a Super Bowl this year or didn't win a Super Bowl and everybody's pointing the finger at Brock Purdy as to the reason that they didn't. Like, maybe they're just not the best team. Maybe they get outcoached. Maybe they have a ton of injuries. As I scroll through the possibilities of why the 49ers didn't win a Super Bowl, I have Brock pretty low on that list, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I have a lot of confidence that when he needs to perform, he's got the mental fortitude to perform at the best of his ability, whatever that is, and he's not going to wet the bed. So if they don't win a Super Bowl, I don't think he's going to be the reason this year why. That doesn't that doesn't make him a franchise quarterback. That doesn't mean that we're going to have the answer of can he carry a team. But right now with this team, I think he's probably enough. And if they don't win, I would be shocked if he's the reason why they don't win.
That's a great comment. And also it leads right to the follow-up question. If the Niners don't win the Super Bowl, Jesse, what do you think will be the reason that they don't? If you don't think it's Brock, because I also agree with you. I think the Niners may or may not win the Super Bowl. I don't think it's going to be because Brock burned them or that his lack of arm strength burned them. I'll go first and say I think it's going to be that they don't match up on like the back end against a Miami or a Philly with their defensive backs, or that there's some kind of injury up front and they don't have quite enough pass rush to really affect the quarterback. I think it's either going to be the back end coverage or not enough pressure on the quarterback. That would be my guess as to why they don't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that ultimately the one reason they don't win a Super Bowl, I mean, I'm not going to predict injuries. I don't even want to go down that road, but
sure
that they play a team that's maybe not as complete as them, but they play a team that we know does have that quarterback in place. Whether that's a Josh Allen, they get Von Miller back and the defense starts humming and they're complete enough, but Josh Allen is like that dude. Or they play the Chiefs. Again, Patrick Mahomes, we know, is that dude. And so they just play a team that the quarterback was just too much to stop. And maybe the quarterback is just too good. Now, a lot of people will be like, well, see, Brock isn't on that level, and so we'll never win with Brock. Okay, maybe. And so maybe that's you saying, I am going to blame Brock Purdy because he wasn't good enough meaning he wasn't on their level. But like we know now that he's not on their level right now. So I think that would be a weird way of looking at things. Like if you're the only way that you should be able to leave a Super Bowl, let's say they play the Chiefs and lose, and Patrick Mahomes lights it up, and Brock Purdy does what Brock Purdy does every week: 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, 67% completion, does all the things that we know he's going to do, and they lose the Super Bowl by 3. If you come out of that and be like, he's not as good as Mahomes, like that's why we lost. Okay, well, if your expectation was he's gonna go shot for shot with Mahomes, I think you have the wrong expectations. That's just me.
I know. I think you're right. I mean, if you said to me, though, are you more concerned that with push comes to shove, that the Niners offense will let them down or their defense, even though they have an abundance of talent on defense? I would still say the defense.
I agree. I started to say last year when they entered the playoffs, and then I reiterated it again this offseason. I think this team, it sounds crazy for as good as this defense is, I think it might be an offensive team more so than a defensive team. And not by much, but I really look at all the talent on that offense and the trust that Kyle Shanahan has in Brock Purdy, and that Brock Purdy has been like the perfect guy for Shanahan and this bevy of weapons, that I think it is slightly more of an offensive team than a defensive team. And I think that's good because when you get to the playoffs, like NBA, when you get to the playoffs, you always say, well, listen, everybody plays tighter defense. The whistles get looser. It's harder to score. You're not going to be up and down on teams. The defense tightens up. Well, when you get to the playoffs in the NFL, I think it's the opposite. The whistles get tighter. They don't want defenses being the reason that teams win. And the offense has to go win you Super Bowls, at least in today's era. That's the feeling I get. And I think that the 49ers being a slightly more offensive team bodes well for them long-term this season.
In some ways, we've seen elite defenses and elite defensive lines neutralized by 3-step drops and the ball comes out. So that's what concerns me. That's why I always felt like if you're going to beat Kansas City, you got to score 30. You got to have a damn good defense, but you got to score 30. And the Niners weren't scoring 30 under Jimmy. And now with Brock, they have been able to score 30. This year, that's all they reach is 30. But I almost start to wonder if the Niners are really going to win the Super Bowl this year, they're probably going to have to be really cooking at the end. And the offense is going to have to score 35, and the defense is going to have to really still be playing up front and on the back end. Let's hit these supers, and then I want to ask you about the title of the stream, which is the defensive backfield. Brother Bob says 310 yards with 201 yak yards is wild, right? Purdy's pimp. Love it. I will say this. Those are the weapons they have. And, will there be some team that can take away the underneath? And that's why, if Arizona Arizona's not going to be in it, but let's just say Arizona falls out of it, way out of it. I would love to offer them a pick for Rondale Moore and not lean on Danny Gray. Nothing against Danny Gray, but I just wonder about his durability. It would be really nice to see if the 49ers had that one vertical threat that could stay healthy and give them one guy like Miami has, one true difference maker that doesn't allow teams at all to kind of flood the underneath stuff, hug up on the line of scrimmage. If you have that one speedster that keeps teams honest, I'd love to see what it looks like. We have never really seen it. Niners have had Danny Gray, they've had Ray, but they don't really use those guys that much. The one speedster who could stay healthy added to the weapons they have, I think would make an immeasurable difference. It's almost like, NBA teams where you can hit, you got to defend the 3-point line and you got to defend the lob. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, look at all the space in the in-between range. Yeah, because you got to defend the 3 line and here comes somebody catching the lob. And that's just a lot of area to cover. If the Niners had that one burner that they could depend on, not Danny Gray, then, and maybe Ray's that guy, but Rondale Moore is a 4.29 guy who's a huge play guy going back to Purdue. To me, that's the guy. If you could get him away from Arizona. Brother Bob has one directly for you, Jesse. He says, Nails, be 100. Would you prefer Tua or Purdy?
I got to be honest. I don't have any confidence in Tua making it a full season
Because of durability.
It's a durability thing, and I I had a show on Tuesday with Ryan, and I said, not this year, Ryan. I know it's not going to happen this year. The 49ers don't have the weapons, but like for me, I look at Tua in Miami as something that the 49ers and Purdy can strive for. Like I don't think that Purdy's ever gonna just all of a sudden grow this great arm and be a Justin Herbert or Josh Allen. Like it's just not who he's gonna be. But when I look at Tua and I look at his frame and I look at his arm strength improving over the years, I look at that and say, why can't Purdy do those same things in 2 or 3 seasons? Like, why can't he develop a deep ball in 2 or 3 seasons? Like, is that really that far-fetched to think that that's impossible for Brock Purdy? I mean, I don't think that it is. So I look at that and I'm kind of inspired and say, I think Purdy eventually can do some of those same things that Tua is doing. It's not like Tua came into the league with all the physical, intangible abilities that the Herberts and all those guys have either. But he's developed some things while he's playing that say, why not Purdy? Why couldn't Purdy eventually do those things? I'm just not going to say that he can't ever. And so I'm probably taking Purdy just because I don't trust Tua to stay healthy. I can't.
He's already had major hip surgery and
The concussions are brutal.
Tua's got a bigger arm. Purdy's got better accuracy. Tua's got more explosive weapons. Purdy has maybe a little bit more dependable weapons. I mean, you know me. I'm going with Purdy.
I don't, and it's interesting because if I was a Miami Dolphins fan, I also probably would say Tua over Purdy because Tua fits what they want to do much better than Purdy fits what they want to do. And for what the 49ers want to do, Purdy fits much better than what Tua's skill set is. So really, I don't think Jesse, the Miami Dolphin fan, looking at things would be like, yeah, give me Purdy over Tua. I'd be like, no, I'm taking Tua. Like Purdy's 3 for 9 on balls over 20 yards. Like, no, we go deep. We've got Tyreek Hill and weapons galore. We got 4.3 speed all over the place. We need to push the ball down the field. Give me Tua. But when I'm looking at what the 49ers situation is and knowing for sure that Tua can't stay healthy, it's like, well, for this team, I got to say Purdy.
I mean, Purdy, run after the catch is all about quarterback accuracy. It's all about quarterback accuracy because if you can hit a guy,
I don't think
so?
Jimmy was a very accurate quarterback, and they sure did very well in Yak.
Well,
here's my thing.
You gotta have.
Let me say this.
Go ahead.
I think a lot of people equate accuracy with completion percentage, and I just don't. I'm sorry. I never have. I've never looked at it that way. I've seen quarterbacks who Jimmy Garoppolo is a great example of this. He can be in the mid 60s on a regular basis, but when I look at the placement of those footballs, I'm like, what? No, this guy's not very accurate. Baker Mayfield was like this in college. Guys are running wide open down the field. And I'm like, this guy's not putting it on the money every time. Like, yeah, he's completing 70+%, but these guys are wide open with nobody around him. The ball placement's not that great on a lot of these throws. I don't believe that can translate to the next level to where when I watch CJ Stroud coming into the draft this year, very similar. Guys are wide open. Don't get me wrong. But his ball placement every single time was as perfect as it could be. I'm like, that dude's extremely accurate. Whatever he's doing is going to absolutely translate in the NFL. And it has thus far. I mean, it's very early, but completion percentage and accuracy, I think, are very different things, in my opinion. They're not always the same thing.
I just think Kyle coached around Jimmy. I think Kyle, he didn't take a lot of shots down the field with Jimmy because he knew Jimmy couldn't make those. He didn't complete a lot of those throws deep down the field in the deep quadrants or outside the numbers. So I think the percentage of throws that Jimmy made underneath was really high, and that's why the Niners have led the league in rack yardage. Also, they've got some rack monsters, Debo being most notable in that group, and then CMC obviously helped. But like the difference between hitting a guy in stride going upfield or he's got to come back, turn the shoulders. That's what I'm saying as far as accuracy. If guys got to come back, even in the flat, I saw it for years with Joe Montana and Roger Craig. And it's like Joe would hit Roger in the flat, but he would always lead him. So then Roger was going down the field. Well, as soon as Joe wasn't there, then Roger didn't. I mean, it just wasn't quite the same as far as watching Roger catch the ball. He wasn't going down the field. He's like more flat-footed. Then he's got to go up the field. I do think accuracy has a lot to do with the ability to pile up rack yardage, but you also have to have rack monsters. You got to have guys. I mean, Terrell Owens was a great run after the catch receiver. Jerry Rice was a great run after the catch receiver. These guys were noticeably faster with the ball in their hands. I kind of think Debo is that guy too. I think if you ask Debo to run down the field, you get one speed, but if he's got the ball in his hands and 3 steps of momentum, it's like good luck catching him. I mean, good luck tackling him, I should say, because he's just going to run through you. He just runs with such power if he gets 2 or 3 steps. Flav says Bills, Giants, Niners are my favorite picks this week.
Straight up or against the spread, Flav?
I think he's probably talking against the spread. Bills are 2.5-point favorites at home against the Dolphins. So and that I don't know what to say about that. Bills are playing that's maybe the game of the week right there.
That is the game of the week. Yes, that is the game of the week. But the Niners 14. I don't care who you're playing.
No, stay away from the Niners with 14.
I don't feel good about 14 for any team against any team.
Oh, especially in the division.
Yeah,
in the division. Cardinals play the Niners tough. And then the other one was Giants. I don't like the Giants. I really don't. Giants at home on Monday night against the Seahawks. I don't know. I'm not feeling.
But don't take my advice. I'm not betting the money. Like I just told you earlier in the show, I don't really bet. So
yeah, and I don't do well betting.
I wouldn't feel good about 14 points for anybody.
Well, especially in a division game, though. Yeah. In a division game, I really don't feel good about giving 2 touchdowns. The division games are often these teams know each other really, really well. It's hard to fool somebody in your division. Frank Tom Ocean says, "Sorry, I'm late. How much for Grant LK Jesse stream?" I could ask Grant. I could ask him what he thinks.
Tough to track down sometimes outside of his norm. So
Grant and I go on Mondays. This week he had Yom Kippur, so we pushed it off to next week. You go Wednesday with Grant. It would be a blockbuster. Maybe we'll do it come playoff time. That'll be kind of a playoff one-timer.
Just do a giant stream. That'd be cool.
Brother Bob.
You'd have to be really diligent about making sure everybody's talking and yeah. Anyways, we'll figure it out.
And it would have to be on Grant's channel because Grant, he's the master of pace.
Yeah.
Brother Bob says Purdy's pimp and nails. Y'all fired Vish and didn't get Kev.
We didn't fire Vish.
We didn't fire Vish. Vish is on is traveling. Yeah. We love Vish. And Kev could never hold Vish's jock. No, Kev,
oh, wow.
Kev's a college student, and his mom would kill me if she found out that he was on back-to-back nights. Yeah, you wasted one night is bad. 2 nights, it might cause a rift in the marriage. Flav says exactly, Jesse. Purdy can't beat Mahomes in a shootout is the dumbest take ever. No one can. Not getting in a shootout with Mahomes should be the goal. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, good luck though.
Yeah, Andy Reid. I'll tell you the one thing that I've seen it now. If I've seen it once, I feel like I've seen it 100 times to the point where I can't wait for the Niners to play the Chiefs again. Andy Reid is so good on the goal line with his misdirection plays. And it's like But if you see the theme, the consistent theme, and it's an Andy Reid staple, is the eye candy, if you want to call it that. All the pre-snap everything's going to the left, the back's coming right. Everything's makes you go to the right, the back's coming left. So you almost have to gamble and think along with Andy. And I at this point, I think if I were a team playing Andy, he's so creative, but this is the one area, this is such a staple of what he does that to me, even if you're going to look bad, if all the action's going right, play the run left. If all the action's going left, play the run right. And if he burns you and all the action, because he's always trying, you notice this, Andy Reid wants to trick you on the goal line. He doesn't want to bludgeon you. He wants to trick you. So how many times are defenses going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe? How many times? I mean, I saw
all
last
of the
week.
Times apparently.
Yeah, every week. Every week. I saw it last week against the Bears. Everything's going left. Here comes the back going right. Here, and it's like very rarely it seems like does he have the ability to just pivot off of it. It's like this is the design play. And it's like if you're going to fall and all the motion, you're motioning somebody across and they're blocking down to the right. Well, here comes the little everything's going right. Oh, the flip left, touchdown. He's constantly trying to fool people, he doesn't want to blow you off the ball on the goal line. It's not a machismo thing. It's like, I want to fool you. But how many times is it going to work before somebody says, you know what? We're not falling for it. Seems like you can just
but then the other problem is Patrick Mahomes is so damn good and smart that he'll figure it out and be like, hold on, they're not falling for it. No, we're doing this. And he's gonna be like, okay, you're good. Do it.
I know. And it's like at this point though, if you got into like a 4th and goal situation from the 5 and he's going to run some play, it's like whatever direction it's going, you feel like it's going, play it the other way. It's going the other way. Yeah. Derek says concern with a burner is getting them the ball that deep. And Jesse, do you think Purdy will make it all year?
I mean, I don't know if Purdy will make it all year, but again,
he protects himself well.
Yeah,
I mean, how do you knock out Purdy? He either has to be over aggressive. He lacks a little bit of fear. Like I would like it that he had a little bit more fear of defenders. He seems like he's kind of got a little bit of a tough guy element to him.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I've seen in the last couple of weeks against some really, Pittsburgh, some of these defenses that are pretty physical, it's like if you get a free run, you get a 6-man surface, they got 5 to block, and you send a free runner at the quarterback, he throws it away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to wish injury or predict injury on anybody, 49ers or otherwise. When I made the comment about Tua, and I assume that's probably where that's coming from, like, well, Purdy's also small, and he's had some injuries here or there. But Tua's have been, like, very, very serious. If Purdy gets a concussion this week, he'll be back in a few weeks and he'll play again. Like, he likely finishes the season. If Tua gets a concussion this week, is his career done? You know what I mean? Like, that's the difference. So it's just
he's had a few concussions.
He's had a few, yeah, and they haven't been of like the okay, we found out after the game it was a concussion. They were all brutal concussions, very, very clear. He got up woozy. He got knocked out and had the fencing response. His head bounced off the turf like a basketball against Green Bay, and he doesn't even remember how the 4th quarter played out. Like, they weren't just light little taps on the head. It was like, oh, I didn't know. They were brutal concussions. They talked about retirement this offseason. That's scary.
No doubt. Okay, we're an hour and 4 minutes in. We're going to go another 5 minutes or so. But I want to I guess we'll bury the lead because we've buried the lead to this point. The lead was, should the 49ers get another cornerback to match up with the Dolphins. And what do you think, Jesse? I mean, if you could, and I've kind of thrown this question out in a couple different ways this week. One of the ways I've thrown it out is if you could add one piece to this puzzle to get the Niners over the top. Because, I mean, if you look at their situation on the cap, Niners created $40 million plus of cap room, second most in pro football. John Lynch has already stated they want to roll it over and probably pay Ayuk next year and retain some of their core. But it also is the amount of money that it can give them an opportunity to add to this mix. I'm almost at the point where I kind of expect them every year to add to the mix. Do you think they will? And like, I was trying to think, like, I was talking to my kid earlier today. He's like, well, who would you add to the mix? And I'm like, well, it's hard to say, but I mean, if Miami's got all these weapons, or if like Buffalo gets another weapon to add to Kincaid and Gabe Davis and Diggs, or if Philly's already got Goddard and Devontae and AJ Brown. The Niners have had some injuries on the corner, and they cut Deshaun Jameson, and they're now, I mean, they are getting Luter into the mix at some point. They're going to get Womack back, but I would say it's either a corner, like, if you could get a Surtain, and Janky here says Surtain got cooked for 70 points. I pass. Well, I don't know if Surtain got cooked. I mean, Surtain's a big time guy.
Yeah.
If I could get, I'm a little concerned about
all 70 points, then yeah, sure. That's the way but that's not how that went down.
But what do you think? I mean, if you could add to this mix, do you want to add, the spot that I think is not addable is the offensive tackle. I think that's a draft thing only. Don't think you're going to be able to. To me, it's
teams don't unload good offensive linemen. They just don't.
No, and it doesn't matter if they're out of the race.
Yep.
So it's like, you want an edge rusher, Danielle Hunter, maybe. You want a corner, maybe a guy like Surtain. You want a receiver. I don't know if the Niners don't really need a receiver. The name that I've been throwing out this week has been Jonathan Taylor. Now, I know they don't need Jonathan Taylor, but Miami, Philly, Kansas City, and maybe most specifically Dallas, all Super Bowl contenders, would be dramatically improved if they got Jonathan Taylor. And I'd consider Jonathan Taylor trade just to, partially for the gain, but partially for the block. And I think you also have a couple players, backs that you could throw back. So maybe you could throw a Mason in a second, or maybe you could throw a TDP in a late first. I don't know. I mean, Jonathan Taylor and Surtain would be, I know Brad's a big Brian Burns fan. He's been singing that one for a while. What do you think, Jesse? If you could add one piece to this puzzle, especially since this decision is going to have to be made within the next month, because a month from today, we are within 72 hours of the trade deadline. So in the next month, that means what piece to the puzzle would you want to add to get this 49er team over the top?
So I'm gonna approach this question a little bit differently, because I think we've all talked about like the Surtain thing. Like, that's been the talk of the week. Like, oh, well, Surtain might want out of Denver. The 49ers should be all in. And yes, if you can go make this team better in any of those aspects, I'm here for it. I do think the 49ers are going to make some sort of move. I don't know how big that move is going to be. This is what's hard about the San Francisco 49ers and losing the way they lost to Philly last year, is we just truly don't know. Some people look at it and say, okay, well, if Brock Purdy was healthy, not only do they beat Philly, but they go win the Super Bowl. Yeah, maybe. Or maybe they just lose to Philly. Like, that's also a possibility, but we genuinely don't know the answer to that question. And because we don't know, they might be good enough as is to win a Super Bowl. But I would rather go get a player that makes me feel even better about those chances and not need them, versus get to the end of the season and need that player and not have gotten him. So whoever that player is, Surtain, yes, absolutely. Danielle Hunter, all of the guys that you're mentioning, because you're right. Taylor, the teams that I look at for Taylor that he could end up with: Dallas, that's a disaster. Baltimore, if they make a Super Bowl,
Baltimore,
that's a disaster.
Yeah.
Buffalo, they've needed a running back for years. Yes. Devontae Adams, what if he goes to Buffalo and it's Josh Allen thrown to Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs? Or Evans, what if he goes to the Chiefs? You know what I mean? Like, one of these teams is likely going to land a big time superstar at the trade deadline. One of these teams that's already a threat. So would I feel a lot better if the 49ers added a Surtain or Danielle Hunter or something also to their roster? Absolutely. I think they're going to add something. They always do. I just don't know how big that piece is going to be. But I would be shocked if a Devontae Adams, a Jonathan Taylor, a Mike Evans, one of those three or all of those three don't end up on one of these already upper echelon teams. And that does terrify me a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I know. A couple last supers. Kev F says Dame CJ era successful without a ring. Kyle Shan era to be determined.
He knows I'm a Blazer fan. Listen, I for 5 years had asked for CJ McCollum to be traded. They waited way too long, and then by the time they made the trade, it was like, you're kind of done here. I'm happy for Damian Lillard. Him and Giannis are the perfect pairing. The Blazers got a ton back. I feel very, very good for Dame, and I feel good for the Portland Trail Blazers going forward.
What do the Blazers get back? They got Drew Holiday. They got Ayton.
They got Ayton, Drew Holiday. They got I forgot who the other player was, and then
Keon
they got
Johnson or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Nasir Little. No, they moved Nasir Little, right?
They moved Nasir Little. They got I think it was a 2028 unprotected first round. No, 2029 unprotected first round pick, and then the ability to swap in like 28 and 30 or something like that. But the Drew Holiday is actually a good piece because a lot of teams are clamoring for him. So they're probably going to net another first round pick out of him.
I just did a video on this today on the Krueg show. I did a video saying that I actually think the Warriors are going to wind up with Drew Holiday. I think the Warriors are going to trade.
Even after getting CP3, huh?
I think they're going to trade CP3. I think CP3 is going to go to the Blazers with probably a Moses Moody and maybe a pick. Definitely a pick, like a first round draft choice for Drew Holiday. And I think the Warriors are going to pivot off of. But the thing is, you're a Blazer fan. Do you think? Now we're switching to hoop, but are the Blazers in that? You said you like the deal, but aren't they now in kind of a rebuild mode? I mean,
fully?
Yeah.
Fully.
So they might want CP3.
They've got the pieces though.
Wouldn't they want a $30 million expiring? No.
I mean, if it nets a pick in return for Drew Holiday,
or if you get you get a pick and you get an unprotected
because
first.
they would probably flip CP3 for a second round or two. So I think if they can continue to like, hey, we started with a penny, we traded the penny for a pin, and now it's $1. They could do that throughout 3 or 4 players. Yeah, I think they would be all about it. Yes, absolutely.
And then this super, I hope Purdy makes Brother Bob says, I hope Purdy makes it a full year too. No Sam Darnold.
Yeah, agree. Yes. No Sam Darnold.
And then Artur Gazarian has this one for you, Jesse. He says, I heard Kyle Shanahan say after the Trey Lance trade that he feels he failed Lance. I see a change in Kyle Shanahan in regards to how he supports Brock Purdy, and I respect that you've been pointing it out lately, Jesse.
Yeah.
What have you been saying on that front?
Well, my whole thing, Larry, is listen, I'm not an NFL coach. I don't run a front office. That is not my expertise. Now, I'm a fan and I pride myself in knowing quite a bit, but I have blind spots. I understand that. I'm not always going to be right. But one thing I do know is leadership.
You're never going to make it in YouTube right there with a statement like that.
Yeah. Right. But one thing that I do know is leadership. And Kyle Shanahan, I believe, has been a very passive-aggressive leader to this point.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of things that I asked him to do to set up Brock Purdy for success, and he's done all those things. First of all, they got rid of Trey. Smart move. They should have done the same thing for Trey with Jimmy Garoppolo. They didn't. I think that was a big mistake, and they never really got to figure out what Trey was because that pressure was always there. They did make the right move for Brock Purdy. Very smart. Brock Purdy's a captain this year. Now, whether the team voted it or him, regardless, doesn't matter. He's a captain. Smart move. after each and every game, Kyle Shanahan always finds a way to be critical of his quarterbacks and has for years. Not this year. He's like, you know what? The fumble that Purdy had in week 1, that was on me. Now, whether that's true or not doesn't really matter. It's the fact that he's willing to fall on the sword for his players. The moment in the locker room after the Pittsburgh Steelers game where he put his arm around Purdy, gave him like the bro hug thing, love to see that. And then when he was asked about CMC, he's like, yeah, I mean, yes, it's on the position coaches. They should be making sure these guys are subbing in and out. But ultimately, I'm the head honcho. The buck stops with me. I've got to notice that he played all game, and I got to be better about that. And then he went out and did it. I just see a softening of Shanahan, a change in his stance. It's not easy to do, by the way, when you've been one way for that long. What he's doing is not easy. Acknowledging your weaknesses, working through those, being vulnerable, those things as a leader are not easy to do. I mean, there's nothing I can do but commend him for it. He's doing it literally. He's like taking the playbook that I've given him for the last year and doing all of the things. So yeah, I'm going to praise him.
He's got a new contract. Him and John got new contracts. What did you say about that, by the way?
I'm fine with it. I mean, the timing was a little bit weird, but
would you have waited until
winning?
Would you have dangled it like as a carrot, win the Super Bowl and then, or do you think it's smarter to do it up front?
To me, it wouldn't have come down to winning a Super Bowl. It's just I don't know. I like to have options, and if I'm gonna pay somebody long term, I've now taken all the power out of it. Likely, here's what would have happened: whether I waited till the end of the year or I did it in week 3, or he said it was in place before the beginning of the season, whatever. Most likely, the result would have been the same. The contract was coming up. You were going to have to choose to extend him or take the risk that you play his contract out. Just because you want him back doesn't mean he wants to be back. So you have to sign him a year early, which means at the end of this season, you're probably making that decision anyways. The 49ers aren't going to make it any further or less further, whether he's signed or not. You were probably going to sign him at the end of the year. So whatever. Not that big of a deal.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think ultimately you got to decide. Some people do better with pressure dangling. Some people do better with tomorrow guaranteed, and you got to know who your guy is. And I don't know enough about Kyle or John to know how they operate. But hopefully Jed got that one right. And then Bleacher Report will finish with this concept. They are saying that 49ers players who should be on the trade block after week 3. I just saw this before the show. And they've got Jordan Mason, Jawan Jennings, who's a free agent at the end of the year, and Sam Darnold. Should the 49ers consider trading those 3 guys this, before November? Or do you think, would you rather keep those guys or move those guys before the trade deadline?
I mean, I guess it depends on if they're making another move to bring somebody in. Like sure. Jawan Jennings, I think, is for sure gone at the end of this year.
Yeah, I
agree. And Bell's filled in admirably, or could fill in admirably, I believe. So yeah, I would definitely throw him out there. I'm not going to just trade him for a 7th round pick, though.
Right.
Like I'm gonna need at least a 5th for Jawan to be like, okay. But then if I do that, I'm not just pulling away from a team that I think can win a Super Bowl. I better be adding something else, not necessarily at the receiver position, but somewhere like what we talked about. If I'm adding a Danielle Hunter, I'm fine letting a Jawan Jennings go and recouping something, because I feel like the drop off between him and Bell is not going to be significant enough to not win a Super Bowl. But I'm not just stripping pieces away from this team. And I listen, I'm not a Sam Darnold guy, but I am definitely taking Sam Darnold over Allen. I am not getting rid of Sam Darnold just in case Brock Purdy can't stay healthy. Why? I mean, to me, there's no point in that.
And Pobbs drops this one. He says a 3rd for DJ Reed, perhaps. Yeah, I could see that. I could also see a Jimmy Ward return if the price was right, probably 4th or 5th. Strawberry reacts as there was also a nice moment on the sideline between Kyle and Brock at the end of the Giants game. I didn't see that. Did you see that?
I didn't, but that doesn't surprise me.
And then Andrew Bowe, new team member, YouTube member. Thank you, Andrew. Welcome aboard.
Nice.
Jesse, great stuff, man. We're in, we're out. You got a final thought, or you want anything you're teasing coming up on your channel? What do you got cooking the rest of the week? I know you do your Behind Enemy Lines on Wednesday, so that was last night. You did your thing with Grant. What do you got cooking on a Friday or Saturday or game day that you want to tease?
Yeah, normally I just cut the videos up and I drop them on Friday, Saturday, but tomorrow, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, I'm actually doing a show with Coach. What's interesting about this, and people don't realize, and they've been at, hey, you got to do a show with Coach. I'm like, yeah, it's hard because you get set in your schedule and it is what it is. Coach and I literally talk for an hour and a half almost every single day. I go on a 4-mile walk and he and I have a conversation every day. It would be a great show, but it just hasn't worked out. So tomorrow, finally, we've put
Is this the first one?
First one we've ever done together. Yep.
Man, yeah, it'll be great. What time again?
12 Eastern and noon.
9 a.m.
Basically
9
noon
a.m.
Eastern,
Pacific.
9 a.m. in the Pacific time. Yep.
All right, everybody, check that out tomorrow morning. Jesse, great stuff as usual. For all you Vish fans going, did you guys get rid of Vish? No.
No. He'll be
Vish
back.
is international traveler extraordinaire. We'll be back together next week, I believe, on Jesse's channel, right? Your turn.
Last Second Sports. Yeah. It's
Last Second Sports next Thursday night, hopefully around 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. Until then, Jesse, great stuff, man. Have a great day.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Take care.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Careful, whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no